Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Coach the Coach Radio. Brought to you by the Business RadioX Ambassador Program, the no-cost business development strategy for coaches who want to spend more time serving local business clients and less time selling them. Go to brxambassador.com to learn more. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Coach the Coach Radio, and this is going to be a fun one. Today on the show, we have Shasheen Shah with Coherent Strategies. Welcome.
Thanks, Lee. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to learn what you're up to. Tell us about Coherent Strategies. How you serving folks?
Well, the company, Coherent Strategies, is essentially a consulting and executive coaching company, if you were to call it anything. But my primary role in my clients' lives has been as trusted advisor, and typically these are CEOs and entrepreneurial CEOs that are growing and expanding their businesses, received a bunch of funding, may have had an exit, and they're kind of just looking to up-level their companies and their lives.
So now, what's your backstory? How'd you get in this line of work?
It's an arguable merger between my own work as the young man in the world at the age of 19, kind of found the world of personal development, and my work as an entrepreneur and as a consultant working for some larger big box companies. And somewhere around 2004, 2005, after kind of working in larger corporations and on my own journey, I realized that business and strategy wasn't the hard part. It was people that were the challenge. And began talking more about the execution strategies that CEOs were being challenged with. It wasn't the strategy, it was the people, and dealing with the people and having some of the more difficult conversations and handling those issues. And I hung a shingle called Coherent Strategies. At that time, I was in Newport Beach and had an opportunity to work with a couple of executive recruiting firms. And next thing you know, people started calling, and I've been very fortunate, been able to run a referral-based company since then.
Now, when you're working with folks, especially when you're kind of just launching a practice like yours, did you have kind of a formalized methodology? Did you just have some best practices that you learned from being a practitioner? Like, how did you kind of go about in coming up with the coherent strategy kind of way of doing things?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There was a book that HeartMath had written, the organization. It was called From Chaos to Coherence. And it really just struck a bell about conversations around alignment in general. And it was about personal alignment in our own brand and how we show up in the world, and then alignment in strategy, and looked at teams and what was missing. It was a question of alignment. So I think it was a combination of much of the work that I had done in the past through various different organizations and programs and books that I'd read, and a knowledge and kind of a knack for business strategy. So I would arguably say the major skill set that I had at that point was really listening carefully and interviewing the CEO and the company well, and not really trying to offer a out-of-a-box solution, but trying to read between the lines and hearing what's actually being said to address head-on the concerns that were spoken, and a lot of times, a lot of the concerns that were not spoken by the leadership team.
Now, on your website, you use the words courageous inquiry.
Yep.
I'm sure that was not an accident.
No.
It implies some kind of being the ability to be vulnerable and to be brave and to be have some self introspection.
Yep.
Why is that important in order to be an effective coach or consultant?
Oh, I mean, I think that was a statement more for my clients today that wish to get engaged with me. I think as a coach or a consultant, if you can't get down to, the humanness and the individual person, and get to that level of really understanding the backstory behind how we got to where we are today. And I'm talking about, like, mommy and daddy issues and stuff when we were a kid, and Johnny at the playground and all of that kind of stuff. If you're not willing to go there, I think ultimately it puts a cap on how much you're able to grow and be an effective leader. At the premise of my practice is, if you can't develop, a level of compassion and love for your own self and your own journey, and some of the dramas and the quote unquote traumas that you experience, and we all go through them, you're not going to be as effective as I think you can potentially be. And I say that with a footnote because it's arguable to say that what's out there in the marketplace today are a lot of tips and tricks and strategies that I think are extremely effective. You can walk across coals and pound your chest. You can, put things into a certain matrix, and there's some formulaic ways. There's some discipline and accountability, and, there's models and paradigms you can follow. And all of those, I think, are extremely effective. The part of my practice that became intriguing for me was really looking at the experience of life that CEO or entrepreneur was actually having. And, I kind of categorized the two principal personalities that seem to show up. And it's either the dutiful good boy or good girl, who checked off the boxes and did what they were supposed to do and gained the admiration of their peers and their society and moms and dads and family and their, fine young men and women. Or there's another version that seems to be more on the other end of the spectrum, is more the rebel who's like, I'll show you, I never got my fair shake, or I didn't come from the right side of the tracks, or people made fun of me or told me I couldn't do it and I didn't have, or whatever. And they basically set off into life saying, you know what, I'll show you. You think, let me show you. And in both instances, they've produced inarguably, incredible results, built companies and have beautiful things in their lives and live pretty cool lives. And yet the lens through which I got to see a lot of these lives were, it just opened up this doorway to an experience of life that never really matched what I perceived that their life was actually like. And that's primarily the role that I've been playing, especially over the last 5 to 10 years with my clients, is cultivating kind of this more sustainable longevity of an experience of life. Because you think about it, all these people, they're coaches and consultants, or they're business people, they're just trying to grow and live these happy lives. And the pathways there that they take sometimes, these pathways are wrought with pitfalls if we're not careful. And a lot of the sacrifices made, climbing up that ladder are sometimes unintended. And, it just becomes this very unsad. I mean, one of my clients said, he said to me, he's like, well, Shasheen, at least I can afford you now. So he's like, so what do we do? So that's really where my practice has gone, Lee.
So now, do you find that they're kind of leveraging your relationship and your coaching or consulting as a sounding board, as a devil's advocate, as someone telling them hard truths? Are you there kind of to hold them accountable? Is it, and if that's the case, if any of those are true, what is typically the point of entry? Because all of those things are kind of tricky to market to the public.
Yeah, I can tell you guys are marketing. Absolutely. It's so funny you say that, because it's truly the reason why I haven't been marketing myself. It's been too tough a conversation to have with someone who has no context of who I am. And it is why I made a decision years ago to run as a 100% referral based company. So typically, no client will come through my door these days unless they've had some relationship with somebody that has gone through the work. And to answer your question directly, yeah, I mean, I would even say, the idea of saying, a coach, consultant, I mean, it kind of makes me cringe a little bit sometimes when I hear that word, because, I mean, I'm a guide, I'm a human being, and the only reason I would say that people have kept me around and continue to call me, and kind of tying back what you said about courageous inquiry, is that, I've gone there with them. They've shared with me their internal conversations. They've taken me back to the playground. They've taken me back to the I'm not good enough, or I don't belong, or God, my mom always wanted me, or my dad used to get pissed if, and where I grew up and how I grew up, and my whatever, it's my spiritual community, my neighborhood, or whatever it might be, that have influenced my life. And, one of my clients has been with me, I love what he says, he's been almost going on 10 years now. It's like, dude, I just love keeping you around. He's like, you're a rounding error in my budget. And he said, you're one of the most important pieces of it, because typically I talk to someone once a week, and I get a call from John periodically, and his whole thing is, and it really helped crystallize what it is that actually happens in these relationships. And he says, listen, I'm making multi-million-dollar decisions, periodically, and to have someone in your corner that's not there to be a buddy, that's not my wife or my husband, that's not, a quote unquote mentor, but like someone that I've trusted with all of this information about me and knows how I think. When it comes to making important decisions, you're damn straight I'm going to pick up that phone and call you. And, you've saved me millions of dollars over the years. So he said, so for your fees, he's like, it's a no-brainer for me. And it really crystallized that's, I think all of us in our lives need somebody that's not afraid to go there, to challenge you in maybe uncomfortable ways, but doing that from a very informed place. And so the process of working with me is like, we roll up our sleeves and, we put on our boots and we walk around and, kind of the sludge for a little while to see what's there. And we pull all this stuff out. We lay it out on the lawn, let it air dry. And we look around saying, wow, okay, I got it. Some of this stuff we can keep, but a lot of this stuff we can get rid of. And, I think it's through that process, that level of intimacy in the conversation, that I would say provides the most value to the clients that keep me around. So
now, that sounds fantastic. And I think everybody should have a person like you as part of the team. How, though, is it kind of sold? Like, is it a retainer? Is it something where they, I don't even know. Like, I see the value. It's not even a question of the value. It's just how to communicate this to somebody and say, you need somebody like me around that's going to, trust me, just share all your stuff. I'm going to be there. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to be a yes man. I'm going to poke at all your ideas, and, we're going to be better together, but just trust me on this.
Yeah.
You can talk to, 50 other people that have gone through it. It worked for them. But it just seems like a weird thing that someone signs on for. And I think it's brilliant. Don't confuse my questioning for really interrogating you about this, because I want to be you. I would love for people to pay me to kind of hang out with them, to kind of really dig deep and be empathetic and yet strategic and help them kind of get to a new level.
It's a pleasure to meet you, and I know we don't know each other, but you really are on the sweet spot of it all, and you're absolutely right. And it is why, the joke is, it's like, well, I've got a friend that I'd love to introduce. Like, so what should I tell him? I said, you know what, just tell him to get on the phone with me, and we'll chat for an hour, and I'll really find out what's going on in that person's life. And it's an interesting, what I'll always say is like, I don't know, get on. I don't even know what he does. I don't even know what Shasheen does, but you'll either get it or it'll either click or it won't click. And I'll tell you, Stone, like I arguably, I don't know, in this past year, probably turned down more opportunities for coaching than I've taken on. And it's primarily due to this one fact. and this is something I learned from one of the best salesmen of coaching. And, because I was so perplexed about the sales process of coaching. And for the coaches that are listening out here, it really comes down to, I said, listening. And when someone does find their way on a phone call with me, the number one thing that I'm trying to assess is there something at stake in this conversation for them? It's like, if this doesn't change for them, what's the cost for them? Or is there something, it's that pain pleasure. Is there some level of like pleasure that they really, really want to achieve? And again, it's not like I just want to make $1 million, or I want to find the love of my life, or these blanket sounding good outcomes that they, a lot of people will lead with. But when you really get down to it, if I can really get like what's going on and see that there's someone there that has access to a deeper emotional reflective part of their personality, and there is something like they do want to make a difference, or they want to be there for their kids, or they want to make a difference in their parents' lives, or their communities at stake, or there's something like that, it's amazing. It's actually not a tough sell. It's just like, oh wow. Then the question is, do I trust this guy, Shasheen? And is this the guy that I don't even know what this guy, who he is? I've never met him. I haven't even met most of my clients face to face, or at least I don't initially. It's now today it's more Zoom and Skype and FaceTime, but it would just be a phone call. And what you started off with, I think that this courageous inquiry is that what I would, if I were to just able to say, well, it's what my clients have said. He's like, what Shasheen, what I appreciate about you is I never feel like I'm being talked at. One of the things that I will do in just about every call that I have, every time I have a call, is be there with them with a real world example, if not in a distant past, if not in a more recent past, just that day, of where I got triggered and how I'm navigating the world. And probably and this just reminded me, one of the highest compliments I think I've ever received from a client was this woman who just wanted to grow her strawberries and build a strawberry farm. And she was this huge executive. And she said, you know what, Shasheen? She's like, you know what I call you? She's like, you're my permissionary. It's like, I just feel like it's okay for me to just be the version of me that I've always wanted to be. And it sounds so Pollyanna, even when I say it out loud right now, but that's the truth. It's like, there's just this sense of, you go to a therapist and there's this wall you can't really share as a therapist, with your client, your own personal stuff. So there's that wall. So you're sitting there in a therapist's office, talking and sharing all your stuff while they're just sitting there looking at you, giving you some, frameworks to work with. Or you go to a consultant and the consultant will give you tips and tricks and strategies and ways of thinking about stuff. But it's rare to find someone that can combine both of those and be there with you emotionally, be there with you strategically, and just kind of get in the sandbox and play around with some stuff. And I think that's truly the magic of the relationships that I cultivate in my practice.
So now, is there a Shasheen for Shasheen?
There sure is. There's a team, actually, for me. It takes a small village of people. But yes, I do. I lever off of my own coach, and I have a couple of other people that serve in that capacity for me on a spiritual side, as well on the metaphysical side, and then just from a purely just mentorship basis as well.
So now let's talk for a minute about your new book, The Kid and the King. Tell us about that, and what was the kind of impetus to write a book?
Yeah, great question. And I want to answer this in a way also for other coaches and other people to hear as well. Because years ago it was, well, Shasheen, do you have a book? Do you have a degree? Do you have you should write a book, you should get a podcast going, you should get a blog going, and get that going. That it'll give you credibility. It'll do this. And I was like, it made my stomach churn. I just wasn't really good at any of those things. And I tried Twitter and I tried social media. And, if you look at my social media, it's like pictures of butterflies and sunsets and the moon and my dog and being outdoors, and kind of more lifestyle and photography. And, I remember one of my mentors said to me, he's like, listen, I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about writing. He's like, well, whatever you do, just just make sure it's of value, and don't be another hack out there. Just don't write a book to write a book. And so this book has taken me 6 years, and it started with this idea of looking at the individuals, the difficulty it was managing individuals within an organization. And I was in Vietnam, and I remember presenting for this huge company, and it was supposed to be an English speaking event. And there was like 5 different languages in the room, and it was almost a train wreck. I mean, it was jet lagged. It was the morning. I had 2 translators. I would speak for 1 minute. They would speak for 7. And at lunch, I was just like, okay, I'm done. I don't know what to do. Luckily, I had this small group of people that is a feedback group. And one of the things that resonated with them the most was this idea of, at any given moment, there's this king inside of us that really is capable of incredible things. And yet the other side of us, there's this kind of childlike tantrum, upset, emotional, sensitive side that kind of just gets in the way and can wreak havoc at the most unsuspecting times. And so here I was getting translated and getting, a train wreck of a presentation. And I decided to just go with the kid and the king, and just did literally one of my first acting performances on stage at the Hanoi Hilton, no kidding, in front of about 250 people, and characterized these 2 different people. And I used the phrase back then, like, who was doing the talking? Was it your kid that's talking, or was it the king? And through that came this idea that what I've witnessed, well, the book could have been called, why do really smart people do dumb things? Why is it that, I'm talking to a guy that's got multiple degrees from Harvard and Stanford, it's just killing it in the world, business and financially, but can't speak to his wife and kids, or has got some addiction to alcohol, or he's got, porn addictions, or whatever it might be. And he can't just seem to right side the ship in certain areas, but it's killing it in other areas. So it was in a way of addressing this duality that I believe all humans have to be and deal with. And it was also my opportunity and attempt to just challenge the notion of this really masculine kind of style of achievement that involved this conquer and crush and discipline and accountability, and you can overcome this stuff. And I would argue that all of those, like I said before, are super effective in maybe getting the ball to move down the field. But man, they just can rob you of so much of the experience. And the problem, especially with leadership, is if you're a guy or a woman that has motivated yourself through like self-flagellation, guilt, shame, and just crushing it, well, you're not going to have the ability to motivate and empower others without pulling out that same hammer that you use. And the number one issue that I'll deal with a lot of my clients is going to be, well, I just can't get them to do what I need them to do. And we look at their communication strategy and how they go about achieving the results they have was by just beating down on that kid inside of them. So the kid and the king, that hidden inner struggle, was how do we effectively deal with this confusion between these 2 incredibly polar opposite sides of our personality? And instead of trying to crush and conquer it, the premise of the book is to really kind of not only like understand it, let's go beyond awareness. We got to come to expect it. Like, we have to wake up every day and know that there's this gun that's on our hip. And if we don't holster that thing and make sure the safety's down and be aware of the fact that even if I bump into the wall the wrong way, that thing can go off and either shoot me in the foot or shoot someone else inadvertently and cause havoc unintended, right? In an unintended way. And so the idea of understanding this relationship differently, finding a more, a less adversarial and more loving relationship between the sides, learning how to predict and see and anticipate that part of us coming down it's like a pitch. It's coming high and outside. You're just not going to swing it at it anymore. It's like, I know what that looks like. I'm not going to take the bait. That's where The Kid and the King really was. That's what the conversation of The Kid and the King was really designed to bring forth is let's understand this in a different way. Because if we really want to be effective, if we want to play the long game, if we want healthy relationships, if we want to have joy in our life, if we want to stop fighting and stop being so damn exhausted and tired, you've got to learn to have some compassion and love for that part of us that got created when we were just really, really young. So long answer, but that's the heart of it for me.
Now, is it written as a fable? Is it written as a business book? Like, what is the style of the writing?
I mean, I guess I would call it like, one part memoir, 2 part tactical, and maybe, the other part is philosophical. So it's a lot of, one of the readers of the book early on, I think one of the nicest things that I've heard said about it is like, Shasheen, it's great because you're not talking about stuff. You're talking about your own experience with these principles. And it's just great. It's you out there surfing or skiing or in an avalanche or just traveling around. And it's just kind of a hands-on book, but it is built with, it starts off with like a 3-minute exercise to just understand the duality. There's an opportunity to understand the 5 questions of the emotional mastery process that I outlined. There's exercises about dealing with and writing a letter to your kid. We actually go there in this book. It's like you write a letter to your kid, you name your kid and you write a letter. It's quote unquote inner child work, I guess. I don't know. I'm not qualified to call it what it is, but it goes there about your childhood experiences. There's an opportunity to write a letter to your parents and really deal with any unreconciled anger, frustration, or issues around things with your parents of origin or the surrogates that you had when you were growing up, to really just polish off any little rust you may have. And it's not about being fine anymore. I'm fine with that. That was a long time ago. Why are you making me write this letter? It's about, people that are really looking for that X factor. So it goes to all of those places and then concludes with, some more exercises of, now that you got that stuff out of the way, you're not trying to be good enough and lovable. Like, what do you really want? I mean, it's funny for the coaches out there. I mean, you probably agree with this. Like the 3 hardest questions anyone's got to answer for themselves. What do you want? Why do you want it? And what are you willing to do to get it? To really answer that question, what do you want? I mean, really authentically, without being some like, I just want to save the world and I want to make an impact. I want to make a difference. And, I think ultimately, if we're not really careful, what's underneath all that, I just want the world to think positive of me. I want to look good. I want to sound good. I want to be admired. It's really selfish at the heart of it. And so dealing with that and putting that into context, I think, really allows for a different kind of expression to be available in the world. And that's what this book takes on. It takes that on. It's been ambitious, and it's taken 6 years. It took an entire rewrite during COVID because I read it and I almost threw up with my own writing because it was just bleeding and full of, I was like, oh my God, stop. It's like, did my kid write that book? And so I got to rewrite it from the King's perspective this last year. And I went through the whole thing with HarperCollins and all these different publishing houses. And it was like, oh, we can get it out in 2023, 2024. I was like, you know what, just hit print. So hit self-publish and it's out there now. So I'm thrilled to have it out there. I'm proud of the work that it is. And, I think it's not for everyone, but if you're ready, I think it can make a profound impact for you and the people that you love.
Well, Shasheen, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I just really appreciate how you're trying to bring a humanity back into business and just never forget that we're all human beings and to give each other grace, give yourself grace. And we're all kind of, I like to look at us, we're all kind of experimenting and we're all trainees and we're all doing the best we can. And it's okay to say that, and it's okay to not know all the answers, no matter what you think everybody thinks you should know. It's okay to ask for help, and to have someone like you in their corner is a gift, and it's great talking to you.
Absolutely. So, you're a very intuitive interviewer, and I really appreciated the time today. Thanks for the great questions and the opportunity to share with your audience.
Well, if somebody wants to learn more about your practice or get their hands on the book, what's the website?
It's Shasheen Shasheen.com. It's my first name, and all my social media is at Shasheen. Let me spell it for you. It's Shasheen, as in November, Shasheen.com, or at Shasheen. You'll be able to find me. And the book's name is The Kid and the King: The Hidden Inner Struggle High Achievers Must Conquer to Reignite and Reengage with Life.
Good stuff. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. We appreciate the work you're doing.
Thanks, Doug. Take care.
All right, this is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Coach the Coach Radio.